Growing up, I always wondered why my grandfather was an honorable, selfless kind of guy to be around. As I look into his past, I realized how he came to be. My grandfather, Henry Taliana, was born in Valletta, Malta, a small island in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea on January 5th, 1933. He was the oldest of 6 brothers and sisters. In 1939, World War II broke out, and Malta, being located in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, would be a prime naval base for any country. At the time, Malta was under the British Commonwealth. Germans, seeing this, they decided to bomb the country to bits. The only defense Malta had to protect themselves was to hide citizens in caves underneath the island. The country was cut off from food and water, and they had to ration items. Some days my grandfather went without eating. Being the oldest, my grandfather was always watching out for his brothers and sisters, giving up some of his portion. At times, my grandfather got lucky by having his uncle serve in the Maltese military and spot him and his family ration cards. At one point during the war, my grandfather met the great ace of Malta, George Burling. After the war, my grandfather became a delivery boy, delivering all over Valletta. His favorite drop-off spot was a little old coffee shop where my grandmother worked. My grandmother, Sylvia Bonello, was born on May 28, 1937. She was the third oldest of 11 brothers and sisters. From there, Henry Taliana and Sylvia Bonello got married on May 28, 1955. My grandfather's younger brothers got arrested just before the wedding at a soccer match, so they had to miss it. After they got married, my grandfather joined the Maltese military, and on the side, he also played for the local soccer team. Unfortunately, my grandparents lost their first baby child, baby Taliana. My grandparents wanted to start a new life after losing their first child. This was a big decision for my grandfather to make: either move to Canada, where he had a lot of family, or move to Australia, where a lot of Maltese immigrants moved to, or just to stay in the little small island of Malta. My grandfather was all about family, so this was a no-brainer. He decided to move to Toronto, Canada. In Toronto, my grandparents had a shock of their lives as they arrived in the middle of winter. This would be the first time they ever seen snow, coming from a hot island like Malta. Christmas was a big deal to my grandparents as they celebrate their first white Christmas here in Canada. My grandfather started working in a factory, also playing for the local soccer club, and my grandmother started to work in a Maltese bakery. In 1959, my grandparents gave birth to a fully healthy baby, my aunt, Patricia Taliana. In 1961, they gave birth to a second child, Rita Taliana. On the 4th of December of 1964, my grandparents gave birth to a brown-eyed, brown-haired baby boy, my father, Christopher Anthony Taliana. Growing up in Toronto, my father had a chance to play all sorts of sports, like hockey and soccer. He became a pretty good soccer player. He had a chance to play for many teams, like the U23 Maltese national team, but could not because he did not want to give up his Canadian citizenship. He also had a scholarship to North Carolina, but my grandfather refused to send him because my father's grades dropped, and he did not trust him to go all the way there just for my father to slack on education. Around the time when my father was 25 years old, his cousin set him up on a blind date. His date was a small-town Canadian girl, my mother, Jessica Bell. A few years later, they got married and had 4 kids: Alicia, Alana, Zach, Michaela, Taliana. Now moving on to my mom's side of the family. A person I truly admire is my great-grandpa, Norman Ryan Bell. He's a third-generation Canadian born in the prairies of Saskatchewan. Being born on April 15, 1914, my great-grandpa lived through many events throughout history. For the first 4 years of his life, he never saw his father as he went off to fight the Great War. As the 20s started rolling around, my great-grandpa had the opportunity to learn to fly. Just as the decade started to end, though, disaster hits. The Great Depression had started. Living on a farm, my great-grandpa's family made a big decision by selling the farm and moving to Ontario. The money they got from the farm was not much, but it was enough to get them to Ottawa and to start a new life. Once World War II started, my great-grandfather was quickly recruited to the Canadian Air Force. He was also quickly promoted to squadron leader and led many planes in a battle. After the war was over, my great-grandfather started to take interest in many things, like collecting cool-looking rocks and fossils to collecting Canadian stamps. Too bad my great-grandfather, Norman Bell, died before I was born, because it would have been an honor to meet him. Now this day should go down in Canadian history. On April 11, 1999, yours truly, Zachary Christopher Henry Vincent Taliana, was born to Christopher Taliana and Jessica Bell Taliana. I am the third child out of 4 kids. Unfortunately, my other 3 siblings are all girls. I consider myself to be a very lucky and very proud Canadian. I started to play one of Canada's favorite sports to play, hockey. I started at the age of 4. Also around that time, I got bit by a tick that gave me Lyme disease. Luckily, my mom was educated on the disease and got me the help I needed. I still thank my mom to this day for saving my life as a young lad. I've been living in the same house my whole life. I have attended 3 schools: St. Margaret Mary, Woodbridge Public School, and now I go to Bill Carruthers Secondary School. I am Catholic and am baptized at the age of 1. Also had my Holy Communion at the age of 9, and then I got my confirmation by the Catholic Church at the age of 14. I've been playing hockey my whole life, and the one person I look up to is my godfather, Brad Bonello. teaching me everything that he has learned throughout his career. As a hockey-crazy boy, I had the opportunity to meet some of the all-time greats that are in the Hockey Hall of Fame. This is my place in Canadian history.